Initially I bought this game because a screenshot of the base building reminded me of XCOM. That's really all it takes. Alters is the latest release from Polish dev 11-Bit Studios, most well known for This War of Mine and the Frostpunk series. Alters is their take on sci-fi, and, well, it feels like someone Frankensteined Death Stranding and Ark Survival evolved together in an Eastern European garage. While most survival games focus more on open worlds, this one breaks the mold a touch by presenting us a linear story moving through a few distinct contained maps. There's some interesting ideas in the writing that are just fun to explore, and the gameplay has some ebbs and flows. We play as Jan Dolsky, whose hard life has culminated in being the builder on an exploratory space mission. This vision of the future is racked with famine and a lack of resources. A multinational conglomerate, Ally Corp, sent scout ships across the galaxy to try and track down problem solvium. Rapidium. Yeah. A theoretical resource that can be used to locally accelerate time, among other things. It's always good to have magic rocks. We take control of Jan as his drop pod plummets through the atmosphere, and we start to suspect that something might have gone wrong around the time we find all the dead bodies. We reclaim our awesome unicycle base thing, try to make contact with headquarters, and then we're off to the races. The Alters is a survival crafting game operating on a day-night cycle where day is safe and night slowly kills you. Not exactly groundbreaking. I'm not a huge fan of survival crafting games. In general, it's one of those genres where the first few games I played were so iconic it kind of ruined everything that followed. I have the same problem with Final Fantasy Tactics. We spent our first few days exploring, gathering resources, and crafting more exploration equipment. This mission was planned out for a full crew, so few of our tasks are automated. At first, anyways. There's a few different methods the game uses to keep you from exploring indefinitely. At a certain point in the evening, you start accumulating radiation, and at a slightly later point, you become exhausted and all physical tasks will take longer. Stay up too late, and you lose productive hours from the next morning as Jan sleeps in. It's fairly typical time and resource management gameplay at its heart. But it opens up fairly quickly, as our contact from Earth pitches a somewhat insane idea. Using the Rapidium we've discovered, we can create an exact clone of ourselves. But we don't need more Jan Dolsky builders. We need specialized labor. Enter the quantum computer. The tool that powers the expeditions, and also a sort of brain memory bank. Using some techno-wizardry, the quantum computer exactly predicts what would have happened to Jan if he had made different life choices. If he applied himself harder in school, well, the long chain of events that constitute his life would be reforged with new links, leading him to become the scientist sent on this exploratory mission. The quantum computer extrapolates what that brain would be like, then zaps it into a fresh clone. Mechanically, this introduces a personnel management component to the game. You'll be reassigning these not-quite clones on the fly to resource stations, repair duty, research, cooking, all those mundane tasks you don't want to do the entire game. At first, when there's only 2 or 3 clones, this is really engaging as you juggle your personnel between these shifts to meet your resource needs. The tools for this management are also very streamlined. You can automate most production with minimum quotas. But for those one-off assignments, you'll get a small pop-up on completion that lets you reassign the altar to the next most likely placement, without interrupting whatever you're doing. Your limit for altars is capped, but increases as you find certain items in the world. Once you get towards the tail end of the game and have 4 or more altars, or you research mining automation, well, I outright skipped a handful of the last days because there was just nothing left for me to do. The main plot is essentially The Martian, with more corporate bullshit happening in the background. There's feuding internal factions and reputations on the line, and nobody really wants to save you unless you can wrangle up a good chunk of Rapidium. but the game really shines when it's exploring the alters concept. Each alter lived a mostly distinct life, or has a memory of living a mostly distinct life, and each one has a unique reaction to awakening on board. Different coping methods, different questions. Each alter represents some virtue or aspect of Jan that he doesn't quite see in himself. Talking to them, completing their quests, it teaches Jan what he's capable of, who he really is, taught by who he could have been. But apart from the character-driven stuff, the concept exploration is really stellar. Some of the Jans had tattoos, disabilities, or just really liked working out. And their reactions to suddenly being in a body without those wear marks is interesting. You'll need to help them feel at home in the base and in their new bodies. And some of them will break down quite a few times before this works. It gets much deeper than I expected, dealing with some of them coming to terms with the fact people they love in their own memories may still exist, but never met them. We've also got multiple big set-piece choices and smaller decisions on the day-to-day that unfurl into multiple endings. There's also a few moments when the game gets surreal that work really well.
Please, don't go! What the fuck? No.
The biggest problem with the writing is not really the writing, but the delivery of it. This game is flush with incredibly basic video game talking scenes. You know the ones. One guy says 2 sentences, then the other guy says 2 sentences, and they both stand 5 feet apart, not moving too much, at a moderate angle. There's good blocking in the cutscenes and some of the more staged events, but the standard talking scenes ended up getting a little bit old by the end. I'm a somewhat fast reader, and by the end I was skipping the actual dialogue before the performance was playing out. Look, not everything has to be a Metal Gear game, but at least for me, this kind of repetitive blocking just does not work with voiced lines. Maybe this is from a lifetime of playing J and C RPGs, but once I read the text, I actually do not want to wait around for the actor to catch up. It's not a problem I have with movies or anything. It's pretty contained to the medium. Overall, it's standard survival crafting, elevated by great writing. A solid linear story with branching endings. I enjoyed my playthrough, but I only went through this one once. There's obviously a lot of other endings, quests I didn't complete, characters I didn't meet, but sometimes it feels like cheapening a story to go through and see every possibility. On the trusty pain scale, I'd give this one a slightly painful. It's a surprisingly engaging survival game considering the lack of combat, and I'm always happy when a game introduces a sci-fi concept that I haven't already seen done to death. Unfortunately, I think this is one of those games like Prey 2017. Technically competent, interesting premise and writing, but somehow fitting into a niche that is pleasant to play but forgotten entirely within a year. Well, that's all for my 45th review. More to come on down the line. As always, thanks for tuning in. I'm JotunWarrior. See you.